So this week we're taking a look at the WeChat Open Class and also discussing some more recent developments, seemingly coming just after planned to just come after that Open Class. Of course, much of the Open Class was in particular about mini programs, and what we're seeing over the last week is that there's been some small but significant changes to mini programs, and then also some interesting additions to WeChat Pay. So Matt, I guess to kick things off, I mean, so for the Open Class, what was your impression? What was your biggest takeaway?
I thought this year was quite different to last year. I mean, the big thing when you go to the Open Class is Alan Jung speaking. So the father of WeChat, the founder of the original team. He's quite a mysterious guy, doesn't speak publicly any other time. And last year's talk was really good. It was excellent. He gave a lot of theory and got a lot of insights of how he thinks. This year wasn't anywhere near as good in terms of what he revealed and how he spoke about the philosophy of the team and what they're really going for. But having said that, this year the main takeaway from the annual conference was just how far mini programs have come, and how mini programs are just everything now on WeChat. They're just all in on mini programs, and it's all they want to talk about, and it's all that the developers and platforms that are built around the WeChat ecosystem that help businesses and brands work on the platform. All they care about is mini programs now as well, which it's quite nice for me, because I've been bashing on about mini programs for a year and a half now, with most people thinking, especially early on, they got criticized heavily in media at one stage. And I felt like it was pretty tough to get people to see the value in the format and get people to understand what was really happening. Even people who I kind of respected were bashing them very heavily. And now it's the light at the end of the tunnel has clearly come through, and it's obvious that these things are going to be huge, which to me was always obvious from day one. But I think for most people that wasn't obvious.
Yeah, I tend to agree.
I remember you did, actually, John, you did like an event in Beijing early on where which I couldn't attend. I listened to it. I only had to listen to it. I was like really shocked at the content. It was, quite frankly, it was just completely, the things that were said in the early days about mini programs were ridiculous from most people.
Well, yeah, and I think that sometimes it's always, I mean, this is true of technology in general. It can be difficult to tell what is actually going to catch on and what isn't. And because of that, I think it's also it's an easy position to take to say that it's not going to work, because basically, anything new, I mean, you have no idea. And so one way or the other, it's easier to give evidence to say why it's not going to work, and versus it's not so easy to give evidence to say why it necessarily will work, because no one's ever used it before, and all these things.
Yeah, definitely.
But I think that at the beginning, a lot of it was from a lot of developers that I had talked to. It was just disappointment, because and it's funny because WeChat themselves didn't necessarily overhype it. I think that people just got a bit too excited, because like the WeChat platform is a bit restrictive, in some ways for good reason, perhaps. And maybe we can get into why it's been restrictive with the official accounts and the subscription accounts. And so people were looking at the mini programs, hoping that it was going to be more open, more free, a different way to interact with users and things. And then when it first launched, you could only enter a mini program through a QR code. there was not going to be a mini program store, like a centralized place where you could, browse and choose mini programs and things like that. And so I think that was probably the biggest problem, is just that people were just disappointed by the mini program product when it was launched.
Right. I think a lot of those things haven't changed, though. I mean, the same complaints that people had in day one. You can't share it on Moments. You can't put it on a newsfeed. That hasn't changed. They don't have push notifications. That hasn't changed. So the core things that people were complaining about is still true, but it's just they've improved, and because that's really against what the whole thing is meant to be about. I never say never, but it might be the case that you can never share them on the Moments newsfeed, and that they can never truly push notifications in the chat timeline. And I wouldn't be surprised if that never changes. But never say never.
But also, I mean, like in terms of pushing to the chat timeline, I mean, you have chatbots for that already, right?
Yeah, I really got the feeling that the WeChat team felt that was a big mistake to let brands into the chat timeline. That's just the wrong way to put services into that environment. Yeah.
Interesting. So I guess why do you think that they're not allowing it into the Moments timeline? Is it just because that at the end of the day the group chat or the one-on-one chat is more powerful in a sense?
It goes back to thinking about how. Okay, so WeChat basically they wrote the book on how businesses and brands and services can be integrated into messaging with official accounts, which they launched in 2013. Everyone's copied them to some degree. If you look at Line in Japan, which have done a fairly faithful copy, or what Facebook's tried to do with Messenger, which is abysmal, in my opinion. But it has its own logic, I guess. And to be fair to them, they're working in a very different environment, and it's a lot more fragmented. They don't have the same strengths that WeChat has in China. So they created this system, and then now they're transitioning they're starting again from zero. They're resetting, and this is official accounts 2.0, and they're doing it the way that they feel in the long term is more sustainable for the future and makes a lot more sense in terms of providing value to users. It's all about users. It's about making things easy for people to do. And when you look at it's actually very, very difficult to do this correctly. Messaging, when you look at messaging environment, it's really closed. It's really private. People spend a lot of time in WeChat, and they spend a lot of time in WhatsApp, and they spend a lot of time in Facebook Messenger. But that time spent in that environment is usually talking directly to people one-on-one or in group chats. And those environments are don't lend themselves to advertising, and they don't lend themselves to this sort of typical way that we think about web pages or services or apps. None of that really works very well in that environment. And so that's why, Facebook's completely failed at trying to crack this, and WhatsApp hasn't even started trying yet. But WeChat has, they're starting to try now, I think. But WeChat has cracked payments quite clearly in this environment. You can send money to someone in a messaging environment as easily as you can send them a text message. Easier, perhaps. And so that part of the puzzle has been totally cracked open by WeChat, and that's actually that's due to lucky money, basically, and that whole revolution that happened. So that's amazing. I mean, that's a foundational technology and foundational thing that they can build upon. And without that, this whole mini programs thing doesn't really make so much sense.
Well, so I feel like a lot of that is because WeChat, the development team in Tencent, they view WeChat as a platform rather than just a messaging tool, and so I'm curious. So, but my question then is, was it always like that? And when do you think they realized, hey, if we're actually going to take advantage of this, that we need to make it into a platform? Because I remember, when it first got launched, it was only a messaging tool, and then
Yes.
slowly but surely it started to add in like government services and being able to pay bills and things like that, even before, if I remember correctly,
Yes.
and
Yeah.
please correct me if I'm wrong, even before WeChat Pay came onto the scene.
WeChat Pay was launched in 5.0 version 2013, I think, which is looking back on it now, it was a game-changing moment. But just as many programs, get WeChat Pay out the door day one, month two, wasn't this huge revolution. It wasn't people started sending money to each other really freely, and that you could go into stores and buy anything with WeChat Pay. If you judged WeChat Pay in month one, you would have said it was a failure. And that's what people judged mini programs in month one and said it was a failure. That's the key difference, because the expectation was so high because of the reputation of WeChat and their massive success. And they'd obviously, the high management had let everyone know this is a big deal, it's going to be a thing, so people expected it to be huge straight away. But that's just not how ecosystems work. It's not how it's not how these revolutions happen. So going back to your point, WeChat, I think they had a massive advantage, which was Tencent already had QQ. So Tencent had been building social products for a long, long, long time before WeChat. And I think they had all of that experience and all of that frustrations of the missed opportunities built up. And then when they started with WeChat, and when it was clear that WeChat had really, really gained a lot of traction and was past the tipping point and had won the sort of mobile messaging war on mobile, that they could say, okay, great, we've got this new fresh platform. Let's do things properly this time. Let's really integrate this with services properly. Let's really look at getting payments involved in this properly. And let's do this. Whereas, a lot of messaging platforms, if you compare it to Line in Japan or KakaoTalk in South Korea, those guys are monetizing on stickers and things like that, right? So, which is the obvious thing if you're a company that's just got this messaging, if you're new to messaging, and before, if there's no WeChat hadn't done any of this in China, you would think, okay, how do we make money from this messaging thing? We've got hundreds of millions of people using our product. And the obvious thing is to say, let's charge for stickers. Let's do simple things like that and monetize that way. Whereas Tencent was just thinking about it on a completely different level. And really saying, no, what we've got here is we have the unique identifier for everybody on their phone. No matter what, everyone's going to be spending huge amounts of time in this app, and it's got your social network. It's got your social network plugged in automatically. And it's your identifier, it's your profile, and that means we can use WeChat as the identifier for any kind of interaction that you make that's O2O. And we have that in outside China as well, like Facebook login, Twitter login, where you can use your social profile to quickly log into other platforms or other services. Right. But they're just taking that so much further, that logic, and saying, okay, WeChat's really the center of what you can do, whether that's making a payment or whether that's logging into another service or app, or whether that's sharing something socially. So it's just that vision for it, and not going for the sticker. Let's monetize from stickers. Not having that mentality. It's just a completely different mentality.
But in part because they had the luxury of time, in a sense, where Tencent. So this is kind of why I was bringing up this platform aspect, because if WeChat never monetizes, it's still serving as a monetization channel, a huge monetization channel for Tencent to all of their other products. And of course, with WeChat, you add in WeChat Pay and the ability to make a percentage on the float, or to make a percentage in terms of transaction fees or something. That opportunity is huge. So if WeChat never implements advertising, or an effective way for brands to advertise. If WeChat stores never really take off, the position of WeChat in the Tencent ecosystem, it's pivotal. It's a cornerstone, because like you were saying, you can use it to sign into everything, and it's a channel into all of their other products, other social products, other gaming products, entertainment products, and things like that. And so I think that's probably one of the biggest differences. They had the luxury of time, in a sense, in that Tencent is this big company doing pretty well already, and also they realized that if you did this right, then it's just going to be so important that it's just going to be the center of the rest of everything that they do.
It's infrastructure.
Right.
It's infrastructure. Right. WeChat Pay is infrastructure. WeChat Login is infrastructure, and then the sort of massive traffic and social graph is also infrastructure. And the way they're approaching it is as an operating system, as in you don't need to leave WeChat. We just integrate and share traffic and share and make it easy for payments and make it easy for doing sharing to socially. Not sort of this is what they want to go against, of like sort of viral campaigns and trying to people to get into the Moments newsfeed, and that's what marketers want to do, and marketers ruin everything basically by trying to. Well, they do. Like that's the thing about algorithms, right? Is that marketers work out how to game algorithms. Right. If your social platform relies on an algorithm, WeChat doesn't rely on any algorithms. That's a core difference between WeChat and almost every other Western social platform. There is one, as far as I can identify, there's one algorithm in the newsfeed which simply hides posts of people that you don't interact with, and that's all it does. There's no reordering. There's no, did you miss this? There's no like promotion of posts that are going viral. Nothing like that. It's a very, very simple newsfeed, and they're trying to move away from the newsfeed being the core and bring it back into messaging and into groups with mini programs, and also with the sort of the new entry point they released a couple of weeks ago, which is a huge game changer for mini programs, which is the sort of what every other social app in the world is using it for, stories. Right, so from Snapchat, where you have the little circle pucks at the top of the homepage. So this is an innovation that Snapchat brought a couple of years ago into social apps, and it's been famously copied by Facebook. Cut and paste into all of their products, and then Weibo's done it as well in China. So you've seen all the big social applications use this because it is actually works very, very, very well, but all of them have just unimaginatively copied Snapchat and not really added anything too much to the format. I mean, in Facebook's case, they've just literally have copied it.
So what exactly is that then? What are Snapchat stories, and how is WeChat innovated on them?
So Snapchat stories is a way to show a sort of unfiltered, raw stream of your life, a little snippet, right, of this is what I'm doing now, and they sort of disappear, an ephemeral type of experience, which is what Snapchat's meant to be about, and then that's been taken and integrated into most of Facebook's core products, and it works similar on Weibo. But then WeChat's said, okay, the core innovation there, actually, one of the core innovations is that you can sort of access this from the homepage, and it's you can do it with one hand, and it's sort of intuitive, and it provides a different way to access information. That's actually one of the core innovations in terms of how it flows in terms of a product. Is actually really, really interesting, but. They've just said, okay, we don't really want to provide people with, let's just take this and say, okay, let's use this sort of entry point, and instead of doing it for like insights into your life, we'll just make it into apps. so that you can access all the apps easily from the top. So it's an entry point that makes well for WeChat. It's mini programs. Mini programs are the kind of their version of apps, and you can access your recently used apps like with one hand, super quick from the timeline. It's actually easier to get to your last used mini program than it is to get to another app on phones now, if you're on that home screen. And so that ease of access is the game changer there. That means it's, once people have built that habit, because it's less friction to get to a mini program than it is to actually get out of WeChat and go to another app. That's why it's so important.
Yeah, and I guess that kind of leads into, I mean, again, we're broadly speaking, we're talking about mini programs. So I guess, looking at the no, hang on, sorry. So there's one thing. So we're talking a lot about mini programs, but there is one thing that I wanted to circle back to really quickly, and kind of get your feedback on it as well. So this was actually the first time that I had seen Alan Zhang up on stage speaking, and one of the things that I was really struck by was just how uncomfortable he seemed on stage. A lot of stops and starts. It felt like he was rambling a lot, like he didn't really prepare for the keynote. And then he kept fiddling with his microphone as well, as if either someone told him that it was popping too much, or maybe like he felt uncomfortable with it, or he wasn't familiar with how those types of microphones works, and thought that he had to keep messing with it to make sure that it was picking him up. And so I was really kind of struck by that, because usually, number one, I mean, when someone gives a keynote, they should be pretty confident, and that's kind of the whole point. But whereas this time, it felt quite the opposite.
Yeah, he's a terrible public speaker. Basically, but people will wait, on his every word, because he is really a genius. He's really a product genius. He's the closest thing China has to a Steve Jobs, a tech visionary. He really is. What him and his team have single-handedly changed China several times.
So basically, people. I mean, it's not that big of a deal. Like no one was really surprised by his idiosyncrasies on stage.
No, it's well known that he's shy, that he's a poor public speaker, that he's quite nervous and often fiddles with stuff and forgets what he's going to say halfway through.
Okay,
yeah.
So I guess,
but like I say, is part of his persona, I guess, publicly. I personally, I feel he probably hams it up a bit,
the level
to lower expectations, I mean, it's quite clear, but it's quite clear that he has very deep thoughts about his product and is very philosophical about how they approach WeChat, and that comes across with some of the content. Some of the things he says really provide very deep insights into how they think occasionally.
So because one of the things that I've been kind of thinking about recently, so I just started using some other instant messaging platforms to connect more with people outside of China. And what I realized is that in some ways, and maybe it's because I'm a foreigner, in some ways, the user experience of these other applications as a messenger is actually a little bit better than WeChat. And in particular, I'm thinking of Telegram and specifically Telegram. And so I just started using it. And what I realized is that it feels better to use. There's certain quality of life things that are there that I think just make a bit more sense in terms of like the design language. It feels a bit more modern. Some of the little bells and whistles make it feel smoother. And then also some of the things that you can do with the group chats, and also with like the channels. You can make like channels where it's basically just broadcast instead of like a group chat or something like that. And so one of the things that like I was thinking that maybe part of it is because WeChat and in particular exemplified by Alan Zhang is that WeChat is a team of engineers who don't necessarily think about some of these bells and whistles. Like they're not world class UX designers.
No.
Rather,
Nothing could be further from the truth. WeChat is a product which has the difference between Telegram and WeChat is the same as WeChat between QQ. Okay, so QQ or Telegram. Who are the target users? Who uses Telegram? How many people above the age of 50 use Telegram? I would say probably almost none. How many people above the age of 50 use WeChat? Tens of millions. Right, a significant part of Chinese, basically all Chinese people use this messaging app. It's an operating system. They have to have a product that is suitable for everyone, and most people are not tech savvy. And when you've got a product that is used by everyone, any tiny change that you make to it basically affects society. If you change the groups rule in WeChat, you are changing Chinese society. Because there's so much business and communication that runs through WeChat groups. It's like the pipelines for information across the whole of mainland China. And it's being used by all cross sections of society. So they're really limited in what they can do. And they have to be super careful with and they don't have the freedom to make changes that a product like Telegram would be able to make, because their user base the average age will be much younger. The average level of savviness with mobile products will be higher. WeChat can't leave any section of society out. And when you compare to WeChat to QQ, for example, QQ has now clearly positioned itself, which is Tencent's secondary mobile product, as for young people. And if you start using QQ, you'll see it's this amazingly vibrant and lively application which has tons of features in there, which I don't see it on any other social platform. You can have little avatars in there that sort of, you can like send the stickers that sort of shake the actual chat thread itself and like have these animations going on. It's like they've got an incredible amount of features in there. You've got like a range of selfie filters that put Snapchat to shame. It's just there's hundreds of them, and so that's because that product is for young people, and that's what young people want, and that's where it's positioned. And so they've got freedom, and young people want stuff that changes and is really, really nicely designed and animated and cute. Whereas WeChat has to work for everyone, and so that's the core difference.
Right. And it's funny because I was just going to ask, so but can't they just make like a Weixin 年轻版, or like a WeChat young person's version? And that's QQ. Right. Exactly. No, and I think it's kind of interesting as well, and it explains a lot. I think because I think that one of the points that I've made in previous episodes about mini programs was that it was a bit of a failed launch. But I think that if you look at it from kind of that perspective of any minor change, is going to affect it was going to affect a wide swath of demographics, and it could potentially, as you say, disrupt communication, but then also maybe just people would stop using it or then revert back to text messages or whatever, because if they don't understand how to use something, they're going to find something else that they do understand.
Yeah. A large number of people who are not tech savvy get annoyed when they don't want change, right? And so WeChat has, again, it comes back to the philosophy of being an operating system. Operating systems don't change that much. They're stable. They're the foundation that everything else is built upon. And the apps that you use on that will change a lot. It will change much more.
Yeah. So that makes sense. And so like an analog might be iOS, Apple with their iOS, because they've been and with the iPhone in general, because they've been notoriously slow with introducing certain innovations and certain features. And then, of course, when they do, for example, taking away the headphone jack or something like that, people go nuts. Or introducing the lightning jack instead of the other the bigger one. I remember a friend of mine was super pissed when that happened. And of course, Android users for the longest time have been poking fun at Apple, users, iOS users, because of that slowness. But then, they're treating it very similar to how Tencent is treating WeChat as the basis for everything else, and so they have to be careful about how and when they innovate and introduce change.
Yeah, I don't know if you've noticed, but the version numbers on WeChat is for the longest time now is stayed at version 6 point something something something.
Mm-hmm.
It hasn't gone on to version 7. It's just completely, slowed down in terms of the user, changing things like groups or changing things like how the core user experience works for messaging. It's just about small refinements, as all they've been doing for the past year and a half is like making lots and lots of small changes, but no real big game changes. Just refine. They said this experience as a messaging tool is there. We don't need to change it. In fact, if we change it, we could end up disrupting it for a lot of people. And what they're rapidly innovating on is mini programs, which is a tool to allow services into this environment. And the beauty of what they've been able to achieve is that if you don't want to use that, the core experience of WeChat has really not changed that much in the past year and a half. But at the same time, if you're using mini programs, or if you're involved in a sort of brand or business perspective, there's been massive changes. And so for some people, the platform is changing at lightning speed. And for other people, it seems like this hasn't changed at all.
So also one of the big parts of the open class was talking a lot about the mini games that had been introduced, and in particular, this game Tiao Tiao, or literally jump, I guess is how you could translate it. It just went absolutely viral. Yeah. I think in part because it was the first mini game on WeChat, but the way that I see it is, mini games are just another version of mini program. And so similar to what we saw with app stores on phones, games are going to be very important to developing the ecosystem and to pulling people into the ecosystem, but they're fundamentally not that different from a mini program.
Yeah, I agree. They're just a kind of mini program, a category. And it's interesting, last year at the annual conference, Alan Zhang was very clear. He said, mini programs, there's no games, and now there's games. And he said, there's no live stream, and now there's live stream. So you have to be, you do have to take what they say with a little bit of a pinch of salt and look at what they're doing rather than what they're saying sometimes, and then think about where it's actually going in the long run. So are mini programs a competitor to apps today? No, clearly not. But then think about where it's going in 2 years. Is my take on that. But yeah, mini games are definitely incredibly popular. They gave some statistics. I think it's something like 100, and so the stats, the key stats from the conference were as 580,000 mini programs now. There's 170 million daily active users of mini programs, and mini games have been played by something like 300 million people, I think. I can't remember. 310. Yeah, 310 million people have played mini games. But that's rather unsurprising that 310 is actually a bit low in my opinion, because when you updated WeChat recently, there was a push to that game with the update. So that's why that number's so high. Right. Because I don't think you had to play the game, but there was a push with the update at least for some people. I don't know if for all users. So that would explain why that number's so high, and that would explain why the game's so popular. The last time they did that was again when they launched WeChat Pay. They had a game called Pencil Pilot, which was a shoot 'em up game, and I don't know if you remember that one, John. It was a couple of years ago.
I do, and because I kept going into the game interface because this was at a time in my life where I played a lot more mobile games than I do now. I play very few mobile games these days, but I kept going into the games menu, hoping that there was going to be something new, and it was always just that one.
So that's the second time that they've pushed a game. Both times those games have been incredibly successful, and both times they've been very simple games. But it's unsurprising. If you push something to every WeChat user, it's going to have hundreds of millions of users. I mean, that's just the way it has to by definition. So that number's not particularly impressive, but the DAU number is quite interesting. 170 million daily active users. That's encouraging. That's very encouraging. That there is an active ecosystem of users, and then 500,000 is, again, that's quite an encouraging number. When we compare that to official accounts, there's over 20 million official accounts, and there's something like 3.5, I think, active official accounts. So having 500,000 mini programs after 1 year, it's, to me, I look back at the data or the estimations for official accounts, it's kind of similar. So actually we can probably expect an explode for official accounts. They really exploded in year 2. I would expect mini programs to be similar. We'll have to see. It might be a little bit slower, but certainly this year there's going to be a lot more than 500,000. It will go into the millions for sure. One sec. So the thing about the games is it's super interesting because Tencent makes 41% of their revenue on games. So anything that a big change like this has got very serious implications for their core revenue stream. And I haven't seen too many people assess that correctly or even assess it at all when it's been talked about in the press. And it's quite clear that mini games could be a real boost to the revenue of Tencent in this area potentially, but they're sort of hampered right now. They've still got a precarious situation to some degree with Apple, because from what it seems to be is that you can only monetize these games through advertisements right now, which is quite different from normally. I think freemium games you'd be looking to monetize from in-app purchases and upgrades, but doing that through the WeChat ecosystem would immediately create some tension there, at least with Apple. But whether that will change in the long run, we'll have to see. I think there's questions over that. And then, will they end up self-disrupting a lot of their traffic and user base in games, in apps that they already have? And then, so a lot of these mini games will end up displacing users. I mean, you could look at it two ways. You could say, okay, the mini program version of a game could end up driving a lot of traffic to the app. But then conversely, you could say, well, it could be taking away from the app as well. And that's the core sort of inherent question here for all of this is, are mini programs a replacement for apps?
Well, I mean, the answer to that is clear. They're not a replacement for apps. Just as I don't think many games are a replacement for mobile games. I mean, I think that it's fun. It's interesting because you look at it in terms of demographics, right? So, hardcore gamers are not going to play many mobile games because the experience is not in depth enough. The ability to interact with the world is not complete enough. So you have like hardcore gamers, people who, spend a lot of time playing games and really get into it. They have, their own gaming machines, or they have a console or something like that. And then you have, mobile games like Candy Crush, like Angry Birds. These are, so-called casual games, which of course people can spend a lot of time playing as well. But the people who play those kind of games are not the kind of people that play the games on PC and consoles. Usually end up a lot of times a lot of women are attracted to casual games, whereas a lot of men are attracted to so-called hardcore games. And so I think it's basically it's like moving down the stack in some ways. And so you have, the most involved experience is going to be on the PC, going forward in VR and things like that, and then going down into mobile games, where the experience is much less involved. It's a much less complete experience. Going down into mini games, because again, like mini games, it's like mini programs. You pick it up, you put it down. You pick it up, you put it down. I feel like it's going to be much more disposable and much more. I mean, again, my sense is geared towards these kinds of games that are you can just pick up and play for a few seconds. And so it on the one hand, it could be, I would say it probably won't be a replacement. I don't think that they would be very smart to try to do minigame versions of their games that they have currently. But I do think that it could just be a different demographic, the kind of demographic that is in WeChat. Someone puts a mini game into a group chat, says, "Hey, beat my high score," and you pick it up and you play it for 5 seconds, and you do or you don't, and if you want, you try again, something like that.
Yeah. What's interesting here also is that Facebook did a lot with games before and then killed it all. Right? There was a lot of gaming on Facebook at one stage, and then it all got killed. So in some respects, we might be able to look at that, and at least I'm sure Tencent have looked at that and analyzed it and thought about what went wrong there before they went in this direction. But yeah, that's the closest precedent we have for something like this. And I think Facebook Messenger also has games in it as well. But I haven't heard anything about them since they launched, which would indicate they haven't really taken off.
Again, so a lot of the hype for mini programs was because a lot of marketers and developers, they felt constricted by service accounts and official accounts. So, I mean, do you think that mini programs so far have solved some of those pain points? Do you think that they will solve some of those pain points?
Yeah, so marketers sort of have a love-hate relationship, I think, with the whole idea, because when you think about, so marketers kind of love service account because they use it the same way as we use email outside China. So email is the gold standard still. You always want to get people on your email list because it's a direct communication channel, and you can push, especially for business people, you can push it into their email. They're always going to check their email. So you're reaching them in a place where there's no algorithm stopping you. You're not beholden to anyone. Like you are on Facebook recently, with them announcing big changes, and then everyone who relies on Facebook for traffic is suddenly, like, their business model is potentially in jeopardy. So you're really beholden to the platform, whereas email is not like that. And for a service account, it is. Well, let me caveat that, like there are filters with Gmail and platforms like that. So yes, it's not perfect, but broadly speaking, we can say it works like that. And then the service account is getting a push notification once a week into your email box for China, which is your WeChat. So it's the same logic that your marketers can reach their fans, their followers, their customers on a regular basis in some place where they can be sure that message will be received. And it's a direct thing because WeChat isn't. It's not like other platforms like Weibo that we were talking about a couple of days ago with Eli, for example, where they changed the rules a lot, and they're essentially there's a lot of rent-seeking behavior where they will change the rules in order to extract more value from the brands and extract more value from the key opinion leaders. Whereas WeChat has a very sort of hands-off. We don't charge for this stuff because it's a decentralized system. So they don't charge for services beyond registering the official account, which is a small nominal fee of about $60, something in that region, and then that's it, and it's free. But you will never get promotion. It's decentralized, so you have to go out and find your own followers. You have to get your own traffic, which is really the challenge of the whole system. So mini programs is very, very different dynamics from service accounts. And the main entry point in the future is clearly going to be search, but it's not there yet. So still getting traffic to mini programs is a real challenge. But the dynamics of how it works, another big entry point is offline. So I think for those stores, so if we move into something like smart retail, which was another huge theme of the conference, Tencent and WeChat are really pushing very hard for smart retail, which is their version of new retail from Alibaba. But the same thing, it's a digitalization of the retail experience. The mini programs add a lot of value to that because offline, the entry point is a QR code typically, or a mini program code. And so retailers have had this huge problem for, I think globally it's a problem, right? They want to digitalize somehow their experience and provide you with extra services on your phone and delight you with sort of, games or whatever, or like coupons or whatever it is. But they can, up until now, they've really only got, a lot of brands have been saying, okay, download our app in order to get loyalty and to get coupons and things like that. And nobody really wants to download an app when you go into if you go into H&M, or if you go into a supermarket like Carrefour, are you really going to download their app just for that? Like, I think the traction on that's very poor. People just don't have that level of commitment to do that. But so a mini program solves a lot of those issues.
Well, it's also, and this. Well, exactly, and that's the thing, because I mean the thing is with an app is that, number one, it's a very siloed experience. You have to go out of whatever you're doing, go to a home screen, and then go into another application. So it's siloed. The experience is going to be fragmented from app to app. If you don't have the app on your phone, then you have to download it. And what if you're in a non-Wi-Fi environment and you have to use your data? Do you want to, use 60 megabytes? I mean, like, I don't think that a lot of these apps are probably, have the most elegant code either. So the file size is probably a bit bloated. And so, do you want to spend, the 60 megabytes, the 100 megabytes in order to download it? Probably not.
The time is like, are you going to wait around for? I think data plans have improved a lot in mainland China. You've definitely got a point. 60 megabytes is not, most people who care about that stuff would have a problem with that. But it's more, the key one's the time, right? It's just you have to sit there and wait for it to download, which is going to take half a minute typically. Right, 30 seconds. Are you going to sit there for half a minute and wait for something to download? No, nobody's going to do that. Right? It's
which just really kind of speaks to what a different age that we live in. That waiting for 30 seconds, and it's very true of the web as well. I mean, if it takes more than 10 seconds for a page to load, most people are going to navigate away. But I think that it's really kind of interesting because we looking at new retail. I mean, obviously, it's not just Tencent that's becoming more active in this area, and in fact, they're almost a latecomer. Alibaba's been experimenting with their Hema stores. There's all of these different unmanned stores, like convenience stores, and then I don't know what to call them, but like unmanned snack stands or something like that. I mean, how would you?
I know what you mean. The snack stalls, I guess, like automated snack stalls. I mean, calling them staffless is a little bit misleading because they're so small. You would never have a staff for it anyway, right?
Right. Well, it's like it's more of an alternative to the vending machine.
Yes.
So instead of having, someone who has to like open and close a vending machine and things like that, it's basically just an open rack of items that then I think that based on an implicit trust in the consumer that they are going to scan the barcode and pay for it. There's actually one in our office here in Beijing, in the common area. And as far as I can tell, there's no security system. There's no surveillance system to guarantee that people are actually paying for these things. But I mean, like for me at least, I think that I have that habit. It's unthinkable to take something and not pay for it. And so I think they're really kind of banking on that. But again, so my point being is that Tencent is a little late to this, but as you were saying with the mini programs, actually they are perhaps best positioned to take advantage of it.
Yeah, so retail is a real battleground now between Alibaba and Tencent. It's a real key battleground. So a couple of days ago, we had an announcement from Carrefour is joining the Tencent side of things. Most of the big players in this space are going to have to pick a side, I think. Yonghui is the previous one who joined them. Alibaba has Hema. They're pretty strong, obviously in retail and in e-commerce. But the mini program is it's a really really useful weapon, I guess you could call it, in this war. It's an area that can clearly add a lot of value to the experience of digitalizing retail offline, and WeChat's way ahead of Alipay, which are also doing mini programs, but they're very much doing it in a reactive way to WeChat, because it's really not it's really something that's coming from Alan Zhang, this vision.
So I just had a thought, and if it doesn't make any sense, just or if it's just too crazy, just let me know. But as you were saying that, I was just thinking, because you look at the way that competition in the internet era, in the digital era, the way it works, and in most verticals, there's a clear winner, right? But what we're seeing in China is that clear winners in certain verticals have expanded their ecosystems to the degree that they're no longer involved only in just one vertical. And so they've used their clear win in that vertical. So Tencent with social and entertainment, Alibaba with e-commerce and marketplaces, and they're now expanding into a lot of different areas, doing a lot of different things. So I mean, like, does this mean that that they are fighting to be the winner of China, and that there might actually be one of these companies might actually end up coming out on top? I know that Alibaba just the other day they broke the 500 billion market cap milestone, but this is months after Tencent did it. But really, I mean, like, it feels like there is this kind of duopoly system being created, if not already. But that this kind of stasis or continued competition between the two of them may actually result in a clear winner.
It's like a game of chess, so they're just blocking each other's moves. I think it's one of them invests in an area, the other one invests in it also. So it's going to be difficult for either one of them to gain a chokehold truly. But we can say the reason why they are able to do this is because they both have the key areas on the phone that are important, and the phone is the remote control for your life. It's like the touch point between online and offline. Whoever controls the phone is going to control, basically large parts of the entire economy. Because the phone right now is just the technology point. It's the truly personal computer. It's the part that digitalizes your life. So it's really the choke point through which these two companies are able to move into a whole variety of industries and immediately become a real big player, because they're able to get the traffic, and they've got such an advantage in traffic and data, and build up across all these different industries that they're in now. The advantages just keep accruing to these guys. It's not particularly healthy for competition, and for a lot of people in different industries, players, it's really scary. Let's just pick another random like industry, like insurance, for example. Tencent can move into insurance, and they're selling insurance now through WeChat, medical insurance, and in a space of a year or two, they're probably going to become a big player in this market from nothing. Because they have the eyeballs and they have the data in order to know who to target to correctly as well. So that's the reason why, that's the core of what's behind all of this. And yeah, it's difficult to see where it's actually really going to play out to in the next 3-4 years. But there's definitely a huge war happening and a massive change to society.
All right. Well, Matt, I think that's about all the time that we have for this episode of China Tech Talk. To our listeners, if you enjoyed this episode, we'd really appreciate it if you left a review on iTunes, or you could, if you're on Overcast or Pocket Cast, you can tap on that star button, and it will recommend this episode to your